I came to rest outside the apartment on a curb. Some people brought me water. They called 911, and I dialed you. I knew right where you were. If I hadn't been there at his graduation, or planned graduation, I was supposed to be in a meeting with you with some fundraising in Dallas. So I knew where you were. You were available to me. And I availed myself. That was the first call for help that I put out. And I think the second most important is that you should have a community of people that are going to come around you to help you, protect you, mentor you, keep you occupied, give you sounding boards. And I had a very large cast. Certainly you were one of those people. I like to tell audiences that I've spoken to and classes that I teach that I had 3 rings of people. I had an inner ring of 10 people that I would call every day for almost 2 years, and they were very patient. And I must have said the same thing over and over to many of them. I tired them out. Eventually, I would wear somebody out who was in the ring of 10 getting a call every day. I then had a next ring. I would call that the outer ring, 25 people that I talked to once a week. When I had to give somebody in the inner ring a rest, I'd move them to the outer ring, and I'd move an outer ring in, and I'd say, "Wow, you've been promoted." And they would smile grimly. There was even a third outer ring. It was sort of like my little universe of about 50 people that I was contacting once a month. So I had a tremendous support network. You know, it was like I was dying through that whole night, and he spent the entire night with me. The next morning, 2 people from that church jumped in a private airplane and flew to Dallas. They picked me up at my hotel. They brought me home. People had never cradled me in such a loving way before. And I was starting to learn just what it feels like to have a loving Christian family. So I wound up back in Dallas, and my house was just full of people, close friends, many of them in that circle of 10, and they immediately wanted to know what they could do to help. And you know, the first thing I looked around and I said, "Well, I've never written an obituary for a son before. How can we do that?" Boy, there were some gasps, some open mouths. But there were 1 or 2 of them that just grabbed clipboards, grabbed pieces of, we had it done in about an hour. Well, those steps that I talked about building a stronger foundation are key to me, because if you wait until you have that body slam to then start doing some foundational work, you're always going to be a step behind. One of the benefits that I had was that I already had so many relationships within the faith community that I had a cast of scores of people in order to help me. If you're suddenly in the depths of that body slam, you really can't function terribly well on the fly at that point. And so you have to do that foundational work. The very next step that you have to do, almost, you know, pretty soon after the event, is you have to start figuring out what's happening to you. Most of us, especially us men, we don't have enough words in our vocabulary to figure out what's happening to us when we're in trauma or stress or grief. So some people who simply want to accept common wisdom like time heals all wounds, or I'm an island unto myself, I can handle this myself. They can convince themselves that they really don't need to do this in a setting of living in community. the first advice Reagan gave me, other than a long hug that lasted about 3 minutes, was guard your marriage to Brenda. It's not that we're set out to take out our frustrations and our anger on our loved ones. It's that when you're in a trauma position, you get so frustrated. There's so much emotion bubbling underneath the surface. Sometimes you'll break out in tears. Sometimes you'll have an outburst of anger. Sometimes you'll just hate the world. Sometimes I've seen people come into my classes and they are as mad as wet hens to God. He just dealt them a bad hand that they didn't deserve. So the overflow of emotion can just really swamp you. Now, if you don't have a strong support network and you're only looking towards your family, you're really setting yourself up for a series of very strong trials. How I lead my life now is not how I anticipated it. But it's even beyond bittersweet. There are times when I am just so overcome with how God has shaped my life. So this last Christmas, I got a Christmas card. Now, I got a lot of Christmas cards. Some of them were very touching. But the one that I'm going to read you a little bit from came from a class of 12 people that started in September of 2016 and it wound up in December of 2016. And it was just a pretty everyday card, but a middle-aged business lady says, "Thank you so much for everything you have done. This has helped me through this process." A young lady, "Thank you so much for being willing to share your story and lead this class." A businessman about my age, "You're the best. Thanks for investing in my life." Another young mom, "I so appreciate your hosting this group. It has helped me more than I can express." "Jim, thank you for all the time and caring you've shown our group." It goes on and on. They all signed it. And when I read it, I had tears. I still kind of choke up even now, and I'm not even reading all of it. But to have this kind of opportunity in my life to serve these people and to help them, to take my brokenness and turn it into being a broken healer myself, that's what the Christian life is all about. And so, if you just work the process and you get through it, there is another side.